So making a cash offer is still one of the most effective strategies in real estate, but most people underwrite cash deals the wrong way. In this video, I'm breaking down a real single family deal and walking through the exact system we use to analyze it and arrive at a cash offer that actually makes sense. This is the same underwriting framework that helped us build a 7-figure real estate business and ensure our deals move cleanly from contract to close. Let's dive into it. First things first is we are using ReSimpli right now. This is kind of the CRM that I'm using to just manage the details on this lead. However, I'm going to be underwriting this property 100% free with free material, and it's going to be through Zillow. So to dive into it, this property is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,589 square feet. Year built is 1950. The lot is 7,405 square feet. Our goal is to find as similar properties to this that recently sold. And so that is what that looks like. And just to let you guys know the parameters that I'm utilizing when I'm doing this process is if it needs work, whatever I come up with for an offer, depending on the amount of work it needs, this property does need, when I spoke with the homeowner, it needs a new roof, HVAC, and windows. So I'm going to be in this section here. And then when it comes to actually comparing properties very similar to the one that we're working on, these are the rules. So best ones are closest, most recently sold. Use comps no older than 90 days. Older comps adjust the ARV. ARV is after repair value, and our whole goal is to figure out what that would be, and then we're going to adjust and basically figure out what a fix and flipper would pay for. And then also, if you're wholesaling it, add in your fee as well, and essentially be able to move the property. And so diving into this, let's go with Zillow and see what's going on. So before I do anything, I always see and figure out what and how hot is the market. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click out of this and I'm going to scroll out. And so right now we're outside of Tampa, so good to know. And I'm going to reset the filters here. And this is a single family property, so I'm going to say houses. And it looks like there's 307 houses for sale in this area. And now I'm going to say pending, so for sale, and then I'm going to say what's pending in this area. So 307 properties for sale, and then just 341. So now I'm going to go to a calculator, and then I'm going to do the math for that difference. So 307 and 341. So we're going to go say 341 minus 307. So the 341 rather, is all the properties that are currently for sale in this area. And so 34 out of the 341 are pending. So I'm going to say 34 divided by the 341. 9%. So if I do a little percentage, it's 9%. So essentially what that's saying is 9% of this market is pending. So that is a very slow market. Generally what we like to see, or the basic rule, is 0 to like 30% is properties that, or rather the market that is slow, so things aren't pending too quickly. So I'd be more aggressive on my offer. 30 to 50% is a kind of like a median market, and so kind of lets you know, okay, I could be a little bit more aggressive on my offer. And then 50% more kind of shows, hey, there's a lot of things moving really quickly. I should be a lot more aggressive on my offer. So just another data point to take into account. And this is a whole art. It's very difficult to get perfect exactly where you're at, but the goal is to do your best and your best guess here. And I'll show you all the things to take into account. So here's our property. We gauge the market. It's a slower market. And now we're going to see what's going on when it comes to the comps. And so comps comparisons, basically similar properties to this one. So here it is. And after speaking with the owner, I guess it's in shambles. It's not in the best condition. So it's just something to note. So 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,589 kind of lines up exactly what the owner is saying. And now our goal is to find similar properties to this one. And then I always look as well, like, okay, did it get previously listed? Just something to note. Something to note too as well. Public report, I would not take into account public report. I would not actually say, hey, it sold for 166. Public reports, there's a whole thing on it, but it is most likely majority of the time inaccurate. So I would not use comps that pull public reports. I'd always make sure the source is from an MLS source. For example, this says Keller Williams. And usually the source says whatever the MLS association is. Okay, cool. So here is the property, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,589. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll in and see where we're at. So if you just scroll in right off the bat, you can see, okay, we're on Florida Ave. Our property is right around here, and just right here. So that's great to see. And before I dive into it, and you can just pull up Google Maps, but since we have this in our CRM, here's what it looks like. So good to see. It looks like it's a block house. And so something to note, and I'll have all these resources, you guys, in the link down below, so you guys can easily use this in the future. But something to note is that you also need to consider if it's wood or block. And so how do you actually know that? So going back to our property, if I were to pull up Zillow again, this property, and you could figure this out in PropStream. There's just different ways that shows this information, but I'm just showing a free way. So you go here, and you're gonna want to see if it's block or whatever the case is. So I'm not gonna take that into account. I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna see how, right here, materials, concrete, block. So now I'm gonna find properties that are block, and also take into account square footage and all these other factors. So the whole goal is, okay, this property has all these characteristics. How I'm gonna try to find properties that are very similar to it. And that's how you can figure out the value. Okay, so going back here, let's go to sold. And then the first thing I'm gonna do is filter by, so I'm gonna reset the filters, or sold. And I'm gonna go for single families. So now I've filtered by the asset. And then ours is 3-bed, 2-bath. I'm not gonna filter that yet, but there are a lot of opportunities. I'm gonna first filter by square footage. So ours is 1,500 square feet, going back to this. 1589. So I'm just going to say 1,000 to 2,000. And then depending on the amount of properties that show up, we can slowly narrow our search. That's kind of the concept. Year built, you want to be plus or minus 25 years. However, the closer you are to new construction, you want to be as close as possible. So when I say new construction, 2026 right now, you want to be as close to that. So like a 2026 versus 2000, there's a big difference there. So the farther back that you go, the less of an impact it plays. So I'm going to apply that. So now I just filtered by square footage, and now I'm going to look for properties. But before I do, a major thing to take into account based off of just the general process here is that we want to find most recently sold. So I'm also going to consider that filter. So I'm going to go to more, and I'm going to say sold in the last, ideally you say as soon as possible, but I'm going to say 6 months. And if there's not a lot of options, I'm going to say 12 months. So I'll just do 12 months to give myself a little bit more to work with, and then I could slowly move back. So you basically create the parameters, and then you slowly adjust as needed depending on the amount of results that there are. So now I just filtered by that, and now according to this process, I'm also going to do a draw function. Because right here, you better to leave subdivision than a time travel. So we could go into other areas, but I would prefer not to do that, right? Because like this neighborhood could be totally different than this neighborhood. For example, this could be the hood. This won't obviously affects property value. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the boundary. I'm gonna draw. So I'm gonna go like this. Our property's in Florida Ave, so I'm gonna go like this. And so I don't wanna cross any major highways like this. I definitely don't wanna grab anything here. And then this is kind of a major road too. Ideally, I just try to find properties as close to this as possible because our property is right around here on Florida Ave, right here in this section. Okay, so these are the properties that I'm working with. And now I am looking on what's going on. So something to note too, when I pull up Zillow, I just kind of just, as a data point, you're using all these data points and then you're just basically coming up with your best educational guess. 257,000 is what this estimate is. There's a lot of factors that go into this estimate. It's usually properties that are fixed up. So I wouldn't say, hey, this property is worth 257, given the work that's needed. So let's go back to this and let's figure out what's going on. So this one's a lot higher square footage, so I'm not going to consider that. Same for this one. Same for this one, this one, this one. This one though, 3-bed, 2-bath, 18 square feet. Awesome, very similar square foot lot. Built in 2025 though. Okay, so right now I know that ARV, if I were to fix up our property 100%, it would not most likely be worth more than 345. So right now I'm at a cap of 345 because a property that was recently just built was at 345. So just something to be aware of. So I'm just gonna put that in my mind. And you could obviously like write these notes down as you go and like make note of the comp. and I say comp because it's a comparison. And then we got this one at 325. It's a little smaller. That's sold 1981. Ours is built earlier, and that, okay, this is remodeled, so it was fixed up. We're trying to find remodeled homes, right? We're trying to find properties once you put in the work, what would it sell for? So right now I'm between 325 and 350. This one's smaller, so that's good to see. This one has an extra bed, and this is something to note. We can like do a little these adjustments based off if that's an extra bed. You can do these adjustments, which I'll talk about here shortly. So right now I'm just going to start throwing the numbers based off of what I see. So we see this property, we're between 300 and 340, no, not above 340. We got this one, 3-bed, 2-bath, and something to note, I'm also looking if it's block. This is built in 2021, so I don't even want to consider it. And maybe I go back to it because there's not a lot to consider, but I'm just trying to find as similar properties as possible. 3-bed, 2-bath, 1506. Ours is 3-bed, 2-bath, 1589, 1950. 1946, so this looks like a great comp. Let's see if it's block as well. Scroll down, and let's see if it's block. And it is brick. Okay, brick. It's a brick block, and you could also just see how it looks. Very similar. When you see the wood vinyl, for example, like in this one, that's when you usually know if it's wood siding or not. But it looks like this might actually be block. But I would always just look. So those are like the main things you're looking at. Looking at bed, bath, square footage, year built, square lot, and then if it's wood or block. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to go back to this calculator, and I'm going to say around 300,000. And then the percent rule, there's a 70% rule. Essentially what actually consists of that rule, like why people say 70% or 80% or 75, based off of the difference between, if I were to say 70%, so the net $90,000 difference between what it's fixed up for and this right here is there's $90,000. That's going to consist of the flipper's profit, paying out realtor commissions, and then also closing costs. So realtor commissions and closing costs is generally between 5 to 10%, let's just say, at a high level. It's usually around 7%. And then that 20% difference is the profit that a flipper would make. And so depending on the market and the risk that it would take to move the deal for how hot it is, investors are willing to basically pay more for the property. So for example, if it was a really hot market, I would maybe do 80%. But given that there's higher risk because things aren't moving, I'm going to be at 70%. And then looking at this, because it's in this section, I'm going to say it's around $60,000. We can say 65. Ours is 1,500 square feet. It's going to need all this, so I'm going to say 65. So I'm going to go here and say $65,000. Okay, and then if we were to do our wholesale fee, we could say 20K. And right now we're at 125. This market, given I know it's right above Tampa, I'm going to be right around 75%. Owner is asking 200,000. Right now I'm around 140K. I added the repairs there, and then now let's just really hone down the ARV. So going back to where we were, we got this property that sold for 335. So maybe I put 335 here. Maybe I can offer more, and most likely I can. But this was built in 2021. This one is 1946. It sold for 338. It sold though basically a year ago. So now I'm going to hone down. Let's see if I can just adjust this a little bit more. So 1,000, 2,000 square feet. Maybe we go to 1,750. And let's just really just dial in where we're at, maybe 6 months. Okay, now these are the properties that show up. So it seems like this one, even though it's built in 2025, I'm not going to consider it. This one's bigger, has an extra bed at 340. And then this one's smaller at 325. So you can see the average 340, 340, 325. This one's smaller, 1981. We're right around this range, between 300 to 340. I wouldn't go above 340. So maybe we're conservative. We could just be around 315,000. And then you actually could do the math of, okay, for example, going back to this, let's say this property has an extra bath. So I would subtract that. So let's just go here, extra bath. So 10K. So I would say making this property similar to ours, I would be at 330, right? Because $10,000 has an extra bath. So I subtract 10K, so now I'm at 330. This has extra square footage, so maybe I'm now at 325. Ours is built a little bit later, so now you're going up. So now you're just doing plus or minus to get to exactly what range you're trying to do. I like to be conservative in the sense when I may say conservative, I like to really underwrite in a way where I am very confident that we can move. So I think 315, I could push it to 325 potentially of what a flipper could sell it for. But given that we're in the winter, currently just to talk about exactly where we're at when I'm underwriting this deal. We're in the winter, things tend to pick up in March. Not a lot happens in January. So there's that. The market's slower. I would be confident offering at 151. So that is essentially the process to come up with your cash offer. So you come up with this. In a nutshell, you essentially figure out exactly what the property details are of the property owner situation, and then you do a percent rule based off of how hot the market is, seeing how quickly things are moving or pending. And then another thing though to note is that you do want to take into account for sale things, but to finish this thought, you would also take into account how much work it's needed, and then your wholesale fee if you were to wholesale it, or if you're just going to flip it yourself. I would say 0 because you're not making a wholesale fee, and now you're at 171. This is your max allowable offer though. So MAO's max allowable offer. Ideally, you offer a little bit lower just to hedge yourself if things were to go awry. Say, for example, this property needed a new foundation or whatever the case is, you can adjust for that. But the whole balance that you're trying to do is how can I offer the most to the sellers so I can get the property under contract and help them and work with a solution and also make money at the same time. So like, where's that balance? So you're trying to offer the most to get the deal in the first place, but offer the least amount in a way so you actually can make money on the deal. So that's the big balance that you're working with. Last thing to note is for sale comps. So we just did everything that's sold. I'm also going to take into account for sale. So I'm going to do here, I'm going to reset the filters. Okay, it's 1,000, 2,000 square feet. I'll just actually reset it just in case. And so I wouldn't now, and now I'm going to do the draw function as well. And I wouldn't, and now I'm going to click apply. Ideally, I should have gotten that area. And now I'm just going to see what things are selling for. Say this flipper were to fix up the property and do all the stuff. What's this competition? So we got 3-bed, 1-bath selling for 318, 23 days, not crazy activity. Usually you like to see more saves than this. So this looks like a little bit overpriced. Ours does have an extra bed. Ours is bigger. And this does look like it's flipped. I believe this is a block house as well, just looking at it. And it does have a bigger lot. And there's things to take into account when it comes to the lot, but especially in Florida, it's not a huge deal. But when you're going up into New England and a lot of acreage is involved, there's a few things to take into account that I'll talk about in a later video. This one's selling for $375, bigger lot. Interesting. Does have a lot of activity? No. Look at one save, 94 days, overpriced. So I think ours, if we were to list it at 315, ours is bigger than this one, like significantly bigger, has an extra bath. And if we were to fix it up, we would move it quickly. We would be very confident to move it quickly as a flipper if I were to. So that I would be confident to lock it up at 171, given that it needs 65K worth of work, and my profit would be around 20% of the ARV. So it's around 60K I would make if I were to offer 171,000. And I do actually want to leave you guys with, the more you do this, the better you get. It's not like it's just a one-time thing. The more you comp, the better understanding you have on these deals. It does take a lot of repetition. So just something to note. And I would also consider, I didn't even filter this by single families, but I would also consider what's pending as well. So we got this one selling for 315. This is actually amazing. 315, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1472. Yeah, this is great. Ours is bigger than this. This is pending, 23 days. Not bad. And ours is going to be flipped. Look at that. 315 is a phenomenal price to when it comes to getting fixed up. And did this get flipped? Yeah, it looks like it did get potentially flipped. And you could actually figure that out though by looking at what's going on here, like the pictures. So this actually, it looks clean. It looks like a flip. It does look pretty clean. And so that's something to note too. When you are looking at these properties, you want to look at the actual condition of it. So 318, this looks like it was kind of dated. They didn't do a lot of work to it. So I would be very confident that a flipper, if they put 60K into ours, that they can move it fairly quickly. And so, like, for example, this one, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1305. This one actually looks pretty clean. They listed it for 129. 1956, smaller lot, and really great activity. Okay, but looks like their investor looks like it does need some work. But this one is actually very interesting. So I would still be confident at offering 171, but I would definitely take into account what's going on with this one. It looks like it does need some work, actually. Yeah, this does need some work. So cool. If you have any questions, guys, let me know. If this video helped at all, subscribe and drop a comment. Everything I just walked through and more lives inside our school community. Also, click the links below for additional resources and access. Thank you.